This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Joanna Blair. We're going to talk to you today about your story and the expectations of an artist. And you're internationally exhibited, self-represented artist. And we're going to talk about celebrating inner beauty and growth through symbolic, figurative paintings. So
Yes.
that's going to be fun because I've loved the arts. I'm an artist myself, but it's welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Oh, very good. Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm excited to have this chat with you. I've been really looking forward to it. All good at this end.
That's great. So, a couple of questions we ask any guest on the show before we get to the heart of your story is what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
What motivates me and why do I do what I do? I do what I do because I can't not do it, to be honest. It's been something that's been with me all my life. I first had the realization when I was really young, about 5. I remember being 5 years old and realizing that that's when I really wanted to paint. And I think what motivates me is I think it's a way of expressing myself in a way that I can't necessarily do with words.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, getting that message out. And I think also I have a real love of beauty. So I think the world needs more beauty.
Yeah.
So that beauty in all its forms, I see it everywhere and in all sorts of different ways. So to be able to get that down on a canvas and express that as well is something that really drives me.
I've always been very interested, as a musician in nonverbal communication. That when you're a musician and you're just like playing like an instrumental, when there's no voice, no vocals, no lyrics, and it kind of like what that instrumentation can represent in terms of emotional perspective to me is a lot like I always refer to this concept that Hendrix and George Martin talked about with this idea of sound paintings that you through sound can create like a painting of sound that has a lot of layers of colors and on top of each other, kind of like what you do on a canvas. And
Oh,
you can equate it sonically to what you're doing on the canvas, and I see a synergy between that.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I remember the first time I heard classical music in person, and had that realization that you just spoke of. I could see how sound, the deeper notes were sort of more like the background, and then the highlights were those high notes. And
Yeah,
yeah, it really is like a painting. I totally agree with you saying that.
yeah, because you can like the different tones are like the you got your palette, and whether you're using pastels or ink or whatever you're using as the source of like your tool or your for us it's like it's my piano, it's a Steinway or it's a Moog, it's a Les Gibson, it's a Fender Strat, it's whatever it is, a saxophone, and it's like whatever serves that that piece. You're going different pieces require different instrumentation, so you're going to go with whatever, so you may use oil, like you choose to use oil, or you choose to use pastels, or you choose to line draw. You did come up with whatever serves like what you're trying to do. So I'm wondering, like, when you're creating your art, what's your general focus? Is like each piece kind of has its own birth and it comes from a different place, or you find like a similarity between what you like to do.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'll start out with an idea, and I generally would create them on my computer first, digitally, just sort of collaging, really, just getting the ideas down and all that kind of stuff. And generally, we'll build it on my computer, and then that becomes my source, if you like, for the painting itself.
Hmm.
So I kind of start off, and very much like you with music, it is building up those layers and um, the oil paint is the last part that I use because that's when I love oil because it really gives you this push pull. Like I can push things back, I can pull things forward, I
Hmm.
can give it juiciness and richness with the oil that I just can't get with any other medium. And yeah, it's interesting how it develops as you go along. Or you're right though, like I'll be painting and then it is an emotional thing as well because from the perspective of even looking at it and thinking, is this actually even working? I
Yeah.
don't know whether you have moments like that with music where you hear it and you
Or I
think,
feel like
oh God.
sometimes it just feels like the muse. Like I've talked to a lot of musicians and they feel like they're channeling something in the universe. Now, again, we've got our 10,000 hours on our instrument or more than that. And then you get to this point where you've got that skill set and you don't doubt that you can do it. You know you've got the talent. It's just like, where are you going to take it? Are you going to, like, where is it going to come from? Is it coming from, a lot of times to me, it's coming from your subconscious, and it's also coming from the external world. Because you could get triggered by a statement or a phrase or an image or a smell or a sight or whatever. And then suddenly there's stuff going on in your subconscious. And when you're doing the work, it starts to come out. Like you could pull a show tune pops up and it's like in the subtext, or something like that seems familiar pops up and you didn't even realize you were doing it. You go back and listen to it. It's like, oh, where did I pull that from? So when you're painting, does it kind of like your kind of subtext or your layers, they come from different places, and you can pull back or pull forward or emphasize or not emphasize, and that becomes like the process. And how much editing do you actually do once you get to the oil? It's kind of what it is, right? You kind of commit.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I do have that experience as well, where sometimes something will come out on the canvas almost by accident. And, you step back from it and I think, oh wow, look at that. I don't even know where that came from. Or something that I thought was a mistake, that when I actually look at it, I think, no, that's pretty good. And it is that sensation of it being downloaded. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that download. It's like the muse. Everybody talks like the Victorians call it the muse. We call it the download because we're in the information age, but it's the same thing. Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's really interesting to me because it's like I talk about like happy accidents. I'm a big purveyor of the happy accidents because I use a lot of tools. I got a lot of digital tools, but I have a lot of analog or acoustic instruments. And I have a tendency to like to use old multi tracks to capture stuff rather than computers because I like the idea of kind of going in and committing to this idea of like free flowing flow state, like in the moment, and I can't go on the grid and fix it. So it's going to be, once I commit, that's what it is. And I like tape for that reason because then
yeah.
it allows you to kind of like, each moment is kind of in time. It's like that's what that moment is. It's like I guess when you have a stroke and you put it down, like I guess you could correct it or you could just leave it and say, well, I'm going to go with the direction that sends me in.
Yeah, I agree, Phantom, because I find I make myself stand back from the camera and long on the brushes, because if I get up tight on the brush, then you end up doing this little section that's really tight and really, you're too, they talk about left brain and right brain,
Oh, too
sort
close
of
to it.
the analytical and creative brain. And if I'm not careful, I can go into that analytical brain where you're overthinking it
Or
and you're
left, right
overworking
brain.
it.
You do too much one or the other.
Yeah, that's it. Whereas I try and make myself stay, yeah, once I'm in my creative brain, and then that's that flow, yeah, and then yeah, getting your marks down and just leaving it, not overworking them, and just letting them, yeah, letting it be what it's going to be, and just trusting your process as well, I guess, too. But yeah,
That's a
no, it's so
permission.
surprising.
It's a permission structure because, like, a lot of times, like the permission structure allows you to even be an artist. Because at some point when you were young, you felt like this is what I want to do. This is who I am,
Yes.
and you didn't have some. Maybe you did, but didn't sound like somebody was telling you no, don't do that. Even your inner voice wasn't telling you no, don't do that. You felt like this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Um, Yeah, like I said, at 5 years old, I remember we came up off the beach, we were on holidays, and, my grandparents have a caravan down at the beach at the time, and I was with dad, and when we were walking back, there was this man teaching these 2 12-year-olds, I think they were, how to paint a sunset, and it was on a summer afternoon, and I just remember being so captivated, and poor dad having to drag me off. Leave the poor man alone. Sort
No,
of
but you
thing.
never know when you get that something draws you in. With like
Yeah,
I've talked to authors and they get drawn into conversations outside themselves, or they get drawn into, and it becomes like their reservoir of material. Because I think that what's great about artists is like we're very good observers of the
yes,
things that are going on inside and outside. And it's the
yeah,
synergy of that, how you balance that inner and outer, I think is what makes artists like why we can do what we do, is because we have that ability to synthesize that. In other words, I don't know how else to say it, but I think there's like people who prevent themselves from doing that. They put a block up and they say what they can't do, and they never will do it. They're not as good as somebody else. They're in the comparison trap where we get, no, it's not, I don't think it's arrogance, but some people might look at it. So what gives you the right that you can put it on the page or you can put it on the canvas? It's like, well, I never thought I couldn't.
yeah. You're so right. You're so right. It is that just, yeah, letting yourself, and the comparison trap is dangerous. You're right there too. Goodness me, you can really, if you're not careful, go down that road, and that really stymies your ideas, your creativity, your belief in yourself, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, and I think that's why for me, like when I'm painting, I like to just be by myself in a quiet space with my music playing or whatever, and then I can just push all of that out and just, yeah, just paint. What is it I'm trying to achieve here, and what am I doing? And yeah, and just get into that flow of putting down, yeah, what you're trying to convey, or what your message is, or yeah, what you've observed. Yeah, 100%.
I think that's also interesting that this idea that I've been kind of toying with is the solitude of creativity, and that a creative person can be at peace in their solitude because they find it very useful for their creative process. Where people who can't be alone because they have to be in something because they can't sit with their own thoughts. Like some people have to get themselves involved outside of themselves, because if they have to go and look at that looking glass self or do any self-examination or any kind of work that we do, is like it's a refuge, it's like catharsis. Other people find it as like, well, that's the cage, is being by yourself, and we find it very freeing to be by ourselves.
Yeah, that's how I feel, Phantom. It's a great gift to, sometimes my most favorite company is my own, just to be quiet and to recharge and to, yeah, just, and that's when the ideas do come to you and things like that, when you're just relaxed and you're not bombarded by people that are around you or noises or whatever. Yeah, I can spend, like during the pandemic, for example, a lot of people really suffered with that. I
Yeah,
was fine. I was like, I
yeah.
could be locked down for 2 years. I'd be totally fine.
My whole household. My wife is an artist. I'm an artist. My daughter's an artist. We
Wow.
found it very freeing that we didn't have to be involved in the world, because we were already in our world. We were trying to find carve spaces in the pre-pandemic world where we have our time to create, and people would want to, you know, have us participate, and we're like, well, I got to do my work. So it's a balance. It's like, oh, and now I'm totally free to just do what I want. Other people found that like frightening. Um, but I'm going to seg into something else. Is like I'm a cancer survivor, and I see that your battle with breast cancer influenced your art. And I've found people in my talk with creative people who have gone through kind of they've gone through these like really pivotal moments in their life, like, and usually it's like some kind of event, and like a cancer, it could be that event, or you know um a tragedy, kind of those type of things tend to drive artists into their work, and they find a way to process it. So
Yeah.
like how did that affect your work, your battle with breast cancer?
Um, to be honest, Sandra, it massively sharpened my mind. It was in a lot of ways, I see it as a gift because it made me really focus. I think suddenly when you're confronted with mortality, um, and I thought to myself when I got the diagnosis, because my background, apart from art, was I was working as a makeup artist, which I'd done for ages, was really good at it, have a school. But you know, when you've got something that sort of no longer serves you and you keep doing it anyway and all that
Yeah,
kind of
pulling
stuff.
you
And I
to
remember,
edge.
yeah, yeah. And I remember walking back to the car once I got the diagnosis. I hadn't told anyone yet. And I just thought, right, that's it. That's the end of makeup. And really dived 1000% into the art. I was doing it anyway. I'd been doing years of international shows and all that kind of stuff, but I was still trying to juggle my makeup school, my art, the shows, clients, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and I think in terms of my art itself, it kind of really sharpened up. I really, I really love things that are uplifting or hopeful or beautiful. You know, I think
Mhm.
we're so bombarded in the media. It's why I refuse to watch mainstream media.
It's
My
negative.
Insta Yeah, that's it, Phantom, and I think I've trained my Instagram to because you know how the algorithm will pick up
Yeah,
what
it
you look
learns
at
from
and
what
serve
you
more
like.
things.
Like if you watch the cat videos, you're gonna get cat videos.
Yes. So I've been so strict with what I look at because now when I'm on there, it's just feeding me everything that I love to see.
Yeah,
And
I like birds and cats. So I watch it all in insect, like, National Geographic level insects. Like, oh, like look at what this ant colony's doing. They're growing like their own food, and they're creating all these things. Like, oh, look how smart. I just get like I'd rather see that than somebody going into like total negativity and toxicity. What's that? It sells paper. It sells views. Um, that's not my thing.
no, I'm exactly with you there. And honestly, I agree. I think you can see how people think the world's about to end and everything's awful and the whole world's at war and this and that and the other. And I think, no, it's not. Because like you said, when you just look at stuff that's just really, yeah, fascinating. And I'm endlessly curious as well. So a lot of the stuff I look at on Instagram is not even art related. It's stuff similar to what you're talking about, or beautiful scenery, or places to go, or
Yeah.
yeah, same with
Or I love
reading.
watching like, I
So,
get clips of like tons of musicians, like Coltrane, Sun Ra, Miles Davis, Hendrix. I get more enamored like with classic performances from like the 50s or the 40s or the 30s or the 60s. And I'm like dissecting it as a musician, like every piece of it, because I'm like, that's my wheelhouse. I want to hear multiple genres, multiple styles, like what makes like modal jazz like the thing versus like psychedelic rock versus classical versus punk, whatever. I like every genre, so I listen to everything. And to me, that synthesis of like all those different places, it can create like opportunities. The wider your wheelhouse, the more you're willing to go in like a more expansive direction.
yes.
So then you don't get directionally thrown into like your box. People like to put people in the boxes, stay in lanes, and I tend to be like the anti-lane. Like, stay
No,
in that lane.
yeah, no, I agree with you because that's when you've got so much more to pull from. And that's how I feel too with my reading and with what I love to look at as well. Um, and different time periods as well. And music, I agree with you. Yeah, it just gives you so much more bandwidth and so many more. It's like a smorgasbord to pull from, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've got a
well, it can
massive
inspire you.
buffet.
Yeah, when there's so much negativity, if you can go dive into, like today I saw some band because people tell you people today in music they say, well, people don't play real instruments, and then I found this band that was playing like five or six members all playing different instruments and they're playing live. It
Wow.
wasn't computer generated, and they're actually playing their instruments, and they were new. And I'm like, yeah, so there are people still believing it. I know they are because I find them, and that to me it was like very inspiring because you see all this negativity and these people were still looking at like this idea like musicians like we can still shape your worldview with our art and we can make it worth for you to want to get up and not be in the doldrums because like hey this is exciting, this is a new approach, this is why you want to get up and get motivated, maybe why you even go and try to do it. Like if you're an artist, like who were the painters that made you want to be a painter? Who are the painters that make you want to be a painter?
Yeah, I probably lean into the Impressionists a fair bit. I just love how they romanticize a scene. Because when you see there's images of, oh, this is where Monet stood when he painted this river scene, and it's like, oh yeah. But then when you see the painting, it's like, oh wow, just bringing that beauty out of what to most people would be a mundane scene if you see it standing on the banks in real life. Or so I do love the Impressionist painters, and
Mm,
I suppose they in and of themselves, they were so castigated in their times, and
yeah.
the world and society really looked down on them. But to keep going, I think people don't realize how much they were hated. People spitting on their work and all sorts of things back in the day initially.
That always
Um,
happens when you're on the cutting edge. The first thing people do is they say they hate it because like you have a canon, and you can just stay in the canon, everybody likes it, right? Then you'll be accepted. But if you push it, you go outside the canon, then everybody's going to say, well, that's not what's expected. It's like, why do you want what's expected?
yes, yes,
But so you always get people like would never want it. Then they'll go back and rewrite history and say they loved it. When you see the initial impressions, and no, they didn't. Like every time you get a cutting edge creator, the first, they do something that's not in the wheelhouse. People are like, oh, what are they doing? It's the guy that's not right. That like Dylan. People are like, you can't be a singer and sing like that.
mm,
But then people started saying, well, look at the lyrics. He's a writer. He's telling stories, and the stories started to eclipse the voice, and then the voice actually then became like iconic because then that voice got associated with the story, and then you merged it and say, oh, that is okay. But
yeah,
sometimes it's like you just have to keep on showing up, even if people are throwing things at you. Like when in '66 when he went electric, nobody liked it. Everybody
right.
started yelling Judas and screaming at him and telling him that he was
Mm,
terrible. And they did it at the Newport Folk Festival. They did it in England. They just totally rebelled. And he said, "You know what? Um, I don't believe you." They told him he was like a Judas, and I have it on tape where he said in the concert, "I don't believe you," and kept on going. And then by
wow.
the '70s, those same songs, he had gigantic 100,000 people crowds. But in '66, '67, when he did it, the people were like saying it's terrible. So I
And
mean,
that's
like,
what's so going.
no, that's
Yeah, that's what's so inspiring too, I think, Phantom, is, when you're creating yourself and, self-doubt will hit, certainly does with me at times. And when I think of things like that, stories like that, you just think, no, just keep going, because you can feel it within yourself when you drown the noise out. And as Dylan said, I don't believe you. And I think, yeah, to have that trust in yourself, and when you get that feeling, when you get an idea and you can feel it in your solar plexus, like this is a really good
is the right
idea.
thing. You have that
Yeah.
artistic fortitude to be the pioneer and traveling the road less traveled. You're going into like the newfound sound and the newfound art. And I always like to be in that kind of newfound area, like because it's like that is the place to be. To me, that's where in that zone where you're kind of treading water a little, but you're not drowning, but you're getting into something, and it's really feeling like life. Like life to me is the challenge is of actually getting to the mastery, and the process of getting to the mastery can be really beautiful but it's like, it's incrementally, so you incrementally get to that place, but you have to actually work at it, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And that's my experience as well of just, yeah, knowing when you can feel that excitement in your chest that yes, I'm really happy with this. This is a great idea. This is something worth doing. And when everyone around you is looking at you like, oh my God, like what is wrong with you? Or yeah, yeah, yeah. You can see they don't even have to say anything. I find with sometimes, people just look at you and they think, oh, for God's sake.
But it
Um,
feels, yeah. 'Cause, I mean, I'm looking at some of the titles of your collection, like the boldness of resilience, and then one door closes, another opens. It's like transformation and growth. I mean, those are the things I look for, like when I'm looking at the things I want to get pulled into. It's usually when somebody's doing some transformative process or growth process, or they're stretching, they're going beyond what they did before, and they're kind of treading new territory. And to me, that's like, yeah, you could just, like, you could tap out this one direction, and then it sends you in this other direction. And some people want to stay where you were, and they'll be like your biggest critics because they're like, well, I love this period, but I don't know about this period. Like, well, I'm not going to stay where I was when I was 17. I'm 25, I'm 35, I'm 45, I'm 55. Like by the time you certain time periods, like you're not going to, well, I guess you could stay at the 17-year-old version of yourself, but most of the time people don't.
yeah, and it's sad when people do when they won't have because it takes courage too. I think that's what I've realized because you kind of get pushed against even subtly to sort of stay where we're comfortable, where you've been, how we know you, and when you start stretching and risking and all of that kind of stuff, yeah, people don't like that. Um and I think, yeah, to live your life with purpose, like I always think to myself, eyes forward, what's next? You've done that bit, or yeah, what's next? Don't be frightened of change. And I think with my series, when one door closes, another one opens, I've put a hidden key into my painting.
Oh, you like to put those
Um,
Easter eggs in? Like, filmmakers always throw Easter eggs in, and musicians throw like shadow tracks or
okay,
all kinds of like hidden things in the layers. That unless you have your headphones on, you might not hear it, and you
right.
got to go in and really listen to it a bunch of times to actually find it. But to me, it's like that means I'm pulling you in, that you actually go back and listen to it again, or you go back and look at it again. You go into a film and it's like, oh, I see this thing was like, it's like foreshadowing of this thing, and I didn't get it the first time I watched it because I didn't pay attention.
Yeah, that's it, Phantom. And I think, yeah, that's what I've done with the keys because I want and I've also done in each painting a QR code that's embedded. So you have to find that as well. And then that leads to, like a poem or a song or
Oh,
something
that's
that really
cool.
deepens the experience because I want my paintings to be an experience, not just something you observe.
Or you want
Yeah,
to pull into multimedia and maybe other, like, you pull into a full experience. Like your painting is an experience in itself, and if it pulls you into something that like you didn't realize was there, like it pulls into a visual outside of the painting, or sound, or some other thing, then that's, to me, it becomes like the full experience of the art in itself, right?
yeah, that's it, Phantom. And that's exactly what I want my paintings to be because coming back to you as a musician, like music is so powerful. It can bring up memories. It can elevate you. It can make you feel melancholy, whatever, depending on the piece of music and what it means to you. But yeah, so I just love the ability to bring sound into the painting, and
That's cool.
yeah, yeah. So that's my sort of signature thing now: the hidden keys and the QR code.
Can I
But
remember,
yeah,
like, I was a big fan of like Andy Warhol and the work he did with Lou Reed, and he used to do
oh,
these, like, we call them happenings. So I think they used to call it the exploding inevitable, which is typical Warhol type of thing. But he'd have the Velvet Underground playing at an art gallery with all his work up, and then also have like actors and models and other artists all in the same space, all doing these things and it calling it a happening. So it was visual, it was audio. There's people reading, singing, acting, everything all at once, and these in this kind of thing. And as you call it, like exploding inevitable, it's kind of weird concept,
Yeah.
but I'm like That's I see a lot of people today. They try to have these kind of multimedia events with art and have it from different layers of different different areas of art all pulled together. And it kind of goes back to the 60s and 70s where people were actually doing that. You go back and it's like it's not new. It's like people were doing it, but it's maybe new today for some people because they think, oh, I'm only going for the concert, or I'm only going to the gallery. But what if that all becomes one thing?
Yes, yes, 100%. And that's where I'm hoping to head as well, exhibition wise. There's an artist that I love her work. She's Australian, CJ Hendry. She's really successful. Her drawings, she's a realistic, hyper realistic drawer. And, her pieces look 3D until the camera angle goes flat and then you realize she's drawn it. It's amazing what she does.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and she does those exhibitions too where they're sort of interactive, and I thought, "Oh, I'd love to do something like that, like on a huge scale and, yeah, have your sort of artwork in amongst it and the full experience of what the painting's almost stepping into the painting, I guess, in a way."
Yeah, it's
So I'm
like what
hoping.
could you do with like a hologram and a real painting on a wall in the gallery, but also kind of segs into a hologram, segs into film, segs into an audio experience. It's like, because there are all kinds of things with auditory. You can have kind of like a multi-dimensional audio that feels like it's coming from all around you. And so if you've had, the quadraphonic sound back in the 70s, it was an attempt at that, but there's better stuff today that gets at that. But yeah, you have this kind of 3D, 4D sound along with
Yeah.
visuals, there's a lot of cool stuff you could merge and come up with. You have both different types of artists. Like, hey, what if we all pull together and they take this discipline and that discipline and like have multiple art, like like a movie. Movies are kind of known for that. Film directors like pull multiple disciplines, but you know, we could look at the world in art as like wider of what you could do. It sounds like you're already thinking about that. You're already in it.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't realize you could do 4D sound though, or 3D sound.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
guys
wow.
talk about it in terms of what it actually feels like and sounds like, but yeah, I'm not the most expert at it, but I've kind of dabbled in people talking about what they could do with it. So I've always been interested in like, well, how could I present something in an experience like at a show that gives people something they didn't expect. So you dive into say, well, is that possible? Is that technically possible? Can I do it with the equipment or not?
Yeah, wow. Because when it kind of reminds me when you're sitting in a cinema, I remember watching Russell Crowe's film Master and Commander, and there's a scene, it's the tall ship, and they're in a massive storm, and you can even hear the sound of the ropes straining, and like I just couldn't get over how much sound as though you really were on the deck of that ship,
Yeah.
just from sound.
Well, the movie
Yeah.
theaters use a lot of cool technology with the placement of the speakers, and then the soundtrack themselves are engineered to emphasize things, and then you can, back in the old days we had these rotary cabinets for like electric organs, and they had these actual rotaries that would spin around, and they actually
Oh,
spin the sound around. So when it spins, it just sends the sound in different directions. And so when you would see some of these bands using them, if you're in that hall when they're using them, the sound kind of comes up from all different angles, and so it's very encompassing. But yeah, there's ideas like in terms of like art, and there's a lot of directions you can go at because the idea of like a sound painting of a painting that triggers sound or triggers memories or triggers visuals, and then actually having a visual that's your own idea. Because a lot of times, like when you have your piece of art, people kind of they own their impression of it, right? Like you had your impression of what you wanted to convey. Do you ever get people that like they give you feedback on your painting and it's not what you how you envisioned it, but it's how they see it? And then you're like, wow, that's a different insight.
Yeah, for sure. It's surprising. Yeah, sometimes people come out with things and you think, oh, I never thought of it from that point of view, or what it's triggered for. Or sometimes they'll come up with things I think, oh, that's even better than what I thought.
Yeah,
I'm going to
because you're
steal
so
that idea.
close to it, right? You're so close to it, you know where it came from. Or maybe you felt like you were channeling it and it's like the world, the universe gave it to you, but it's like it gave it to you in that moment, you were in it. But how somebody else experiences it is different than when you were in it doing it. Because they're like the receiver, you were actually in the middle of it creating it. And so you had like this unique experience that's different than anybody else because you're the one that brought it to life. And then the other people are actually seeing the result of that, bringing that to life.
Yeah, definitely, Phantom. Definitely. Yeah, yeah. No, it is fascinating, especially when I'm at exhibition and people don't know who you are, and you kind of just stand by like a bystander and just overhear what they're
Yeah, that's a good
saying.
way to do it.
Like that can be interesting. Although you do need a thick skin
Yeah,
at
that's like if you go to a
times.
big concert and you sneak off stage after you've been on stage and you go into the crowd to kind of get the feedback. It's like, oh, that last band was awesome. Oh, no, they weren't really hitting it. And you're like, they don't know it's you because you were like, you just go and then you're dressed down and you're in the crowd and like, yeah, we do the same thing.
That's it. That's it.
But
Oh.
as a woman artist, do you find there are still barriers to where you can move into? Are there like glass ceilings for you in the art world? Is it still more dominated by one group or another?
I haven't personally experienced that. I've kind of really shied away from the gallery system and that side of the art world. There's sort of art world. There's sort of two art worlds in my experience. There's the one where you're going after the galleries and the prestige of the art world, and where the major galleries will laud you. I find if you're chasing that, in my experience anyway, that you're much more likely to be a starving artist because they're deciding what's art, what's not, all of that
Mhm.
kind of thing. And I always love business and control of my own work and what I charge and who's buying it. I want to connect directly with my collectors and things like that. So I've kind of gone the other side where
More
I've
independent.
really, yeah, yeah. And I think that saves, because then it really does come down to your own work, whether it's resonating with people or not. Um, yeah, and I suppose from the business point of view of art is thinking about who your avatar is, like who am I actually aiming this at, so that it's kind of got a direction as well, if that makes sense. Yeah, the business side does have to come in, but I haven't personally experienced that. So I know that it certainly has existed in the past. A lot of artists, if you're a woman, just forget about it. Some of
Yeah.
them painted under men's names.
Yeah, well, the old, going back to the classic periods in the canon, it was not expected, And it's like same in all in the art world too. It's this, I mean, music world is like you have this kind of revolution in the late '60s and the '70s. You get the female singer songwriter, the Carole Kings, Joni Mitchells suddenly get on the same level as like the Dylans and Keith Richards and the Beatles, and people are like, oh, we can hear it from that point of view. And now it's more common. Now we can have like massive like people winning, getting that same acclaim as like the Beatles with a Taylor Swift, being at the mega
Yeah,
level. Um,
yeah,
but it seems to me like that being an independent artist, because I tend to interview more independent artists, whether they're a filmmaker or photographer, or painter, or musician, just because I like to see what's coming from that space versus what's coming from the corporate space.
yeah,
Because the corporate space tends to want to clone things. and just give me the same thing that I've been seeing all the time, the same story, the same film over and over. And I find what's always more interesting to me is it doesn't matter if it's some big budget or some massive. I just want to see a good story or see somebody's vision. And I think the visions that come from the unexpected places to me are more interesting to me.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's another reason why I really want my independence. I mean, a famous example musician wise that I can think of that probably got stymied a whole lot was someone like Whitney Houston.
Hmm.
She really was pushed into that way of singing and that image and all of that kind of stuff. And when I watched the documentary on her, I thought, wow, she really was nothing like that. David Cassidy is another one, really wanted to
Yeah,
be.
push the
Um,
same way. Yeah,
yeah, and you can just see how much it destroys them in the end as well. Being forced to do something, it's mega successful, it's earning bazillions of money for a lot of people, including the artists themselves. But the thought of just hating what you're doing, and there's so many people relying on you that you have to keep going in that genre, whether you like it or not, and then you can't break out of it because that's what people know you as. And when you pivot away from that, everyone's like, no, not having that.
yeah. It's when you're
um,
able to be kind of this reinvent. You're like Bowie. I loved Bowie with he was willing to change, and then didn't care if it was commercially successful. Didn't seem to care because he would continually do it.
Great example.
And it's like Bowie just had this idea. I think he had this quote. It's like, if I don't feel like I'm treading water artistically, it doesn't make me like feel like I'm successful as an artist. He felt like he was like phoning it in if he didn't kind of push himself. Because he could have stayed as like Ziggy Stardust. That was super popular. He could have stayed like that for 10 years. He did it for like two, and then boom, went to a whole different persona and whole different genre. And so he would move in that way. And the business people, they don't like it. They don't like it when you do that. But it's like you have to kind of know who you are. And sometimes, like if you're young, when you're an artist, sometimes you start when you're 17, and you get all this management around you, and then you're kind of stuck on on the path unless you have like a really strong vision and fortitude to buck that path. It's a hard thing to buck.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I think when I look at somebody like Prince, how gifted he was, like far out to be able to play. I think it was when he was first starting out, I think he was like 17 and he it was Quincy Jones that was going to produce his first thing. And he said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to produce it. I don't trust you.
Yeah, but
um,
he had that fortitude. Like he's 16, 17. He was on a mission because his father was a great jazz piano player, but he never went anywhere. But he was great, and Prince wanted to prove to his father that he could like do better than him. So he went and learned like every instrument he could find to prove to his jazz musician father that like that you might be great on piano, but I can do guitar, I can do bass, I can do organ, I can do this, drums. He's like, and he's he was kind of just in this battle with his dad to get to the certain level. And by the time he's 17, he's like able to like produce and engineer his first record and say, "Hey, I don't need Quincy, I don't need Maurice White, I don't need any of these guys." And the record company was like, "Who's this guy think he is?" But he stood his ground at that age because he was music was the thing that made him feel. All the other things in life I read about him is like that. That was the one thing that gave him his like solace was like music was his blanket. It's like security. It's like everything. And maybe it was too much because it's like that was mostly what he did because he has like tens of thousands of unheard songs. Because the guy
wow.
is not like most rock stars. He's like writing every day. He's right all the time. Never really stopped. Maybe he needed to stop to live life, but he spent a lot of time writing. Maybe too much time, but
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When they're that, I also admire the courage to stand your ground at such a young age, especially. I mean, God's sake, Quincy Jones, for heaven's sakes, like, and yeah, it wasn't until after he died that I sort of found out that he was able to play all those instruments and a lot of those tracks he had engineered it. That was him playing everything. It's like, oh my god, that's amazing. And
Yeah, this could like if you have a vision, sometimes you don't want to compromise your vision. And some
yeah,
artists, like a Miles Davis, he'll bring, he'll have Coltrane around him. He'll have some of the guys from the Weather Report. You have all these great musicians around him that were at the same level. Prince didn't seem to like to do that as much as to like later he did. He brought people around. He created some bands that he kind of handpicked to be people he thought could keep up with him. But in the beginning, like a lot of it is like it's all him. It's pretty much
yeah,
all him. It's like because that's the only way he could get it was to communicate it through himself. He had a hard time communicating. Later in life, he got better at communicating to other musicians on what he wanted. But in the early days, he was just so focused on his vision. And I think as a painter, you probably like this is your vision. You don't have other people coming in, right? You do it, so you can. I think you can get that right because you're seeing what you want. You're framing it and then you're executing it. You're not like handing it to other people to execute.
yeah. That's exactly right, Pan. Because I know there's a lot of artists that will do that. Well, they'll draw out the concept, and then they have sort of people at the back that finish it off or create it or whatever. And I just think, yeah, no, I can see it in my mind. And I think that's another reason why I like the independence as well, because even how it's presented at exhibition, I've got control over that as
Or you
well. I
want
don't have,
total control of it. You want the presentation layer too.
yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it. Because I learned the hard way that when you kind of give it over to someone else and then you see it and you're like, oh, that's not what
That's not your
I don't
vision.
like it. Yeah, that's not it. You're ruining it. But yeah, no, 100%. I can't imagine collaborating with someone on a painting or, yeah, I can totally relate to Prince. And I think, yeah, I think just that drive and just that commitment to yourself, like don't let it get muddy. Don't listen to other people that don't understand what you're trying to do, or, trust your judgment.
But can you have a story to tell? Like any great author, like you might have your beta readers, you might have your editor, but still, it's like your world. You create that world. You create the characters. You create the plot. You create the whole thing. Do you get this? It's your vision executed with your unique spin on the world and the worlds you build. And to me, it's like a painting is the same kind of world as a film, the same kind of world as a novel. And you could sit there all day getting from it like what you get from it, like the great novel. You read a Moby Dick, you see a great painting, you can dive into all the aspects of that painting at the same level. You could critique or do a review on Moby Dick. You could do that with any great painting.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I think that's why what people say to me, oh, when I'm at an exhibition, oh, I don't know very much about art, and I always say you don't need to know anything about art. When you look at something, does it speak to you? Does it make you feel something? Like if you were to purchase that piece and you've got it up at home, would it bring you joy to look at it every day? Yeah, that's all it needs to be. Just that, yeah, that thing that speaks to you. And I've got artwork up at home here at home that most of it's not mine. It's just pieces that I just love looking at. That,
Spoke to you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you're right. You could look at them for ages and you never get sick of it.
Yeah, because you keep
Um,
on discovering things about it. Like I listen to a great piece of music and I find new things in it all the time. It's kind of like based on like wherever my head's at today, and I go listen you know, to the Miles, anything Miles is doing like in the bebop period, and I'll find things in it that I didn't find in it like the day before or a week before or a year before. It's like I keep on finding things in it. And I think that's really true with any piece of art. I mean, I go watch like Citizen Kane, which I love because like Orson Welles would talk about how like he didn't know what you couldn't do with the camera. So he did stuff that hadn't been done because he didn't know you couldn't do it.
right. Yep.
And I thought it was really interesting. It's like that's really cool to have this like writer director that's really like I'm just gonna see what I can do. And he didn't have like this kind of ceiling on him. He's like, well, I want to see what like I want to see what's possible. And
Kind of like Musk, really. He's like that too, isn't he? Like
yeah,
in a business sense. Yeah, yeah. What? Yeah. Who says I can't do it?
yeah, because I think when you get out there, it's like you're only constrained by your like your the perceived limit. And like if you don't see it, like somebody else might see it, oh, there's a limit to what you can do here. And if you don't see it, then as soon as you break it, they're like, "Oh, you're out of bounds." So well, I didn't know there was a boundary.
And that's why I think kids, when they are artistic, whether it's music, art, or whatever, when a parent doesn't try and dissuade them and just, yeah, because they don't know that it can't be done,
Yeah,
and then what everyone thinks is impossible actually is made possible just because that person doesn't realize it's supposed to be impossible, you
yeah. I mean,
know.
that's the thing. Is like when you can actually, envision something, and somebody didn't tell you, like, well, art is not valuable to they think, well, like, my bonds and my stocks and my money and my gold, that's value, but art, I'm like, I don't see value in that. So if somebody gets that in their head, they say, well, I can't make money with art. It's not really a real job. Like, so the artists were always kind of put in this thing. It was like, when are you going to get a real job? It's like people around you
Yes.
who are in the 9 to 5 world. They can't understand it. It's like, how could you do that? How could you have security in doing that? Like, don't you need like a structure? Like, well, the structure is my creative process.
Yes.
I don't need the cubicle structure.
Yeah, definitely. Oh God, the cubicle structure, definitely. Yeah, and you're so right, because that's how we're conditioned through school as well. That, yeah, how can, and I think also people don't understand, if an artist is able to produce something reasonably quickly, well, then how can that be worth anything? Or
Yeah,
they don't understand.
the time it takes to create it is doesn't measure how valuable it is. But yeah, in
No.
a world that where people are measuring on like a capitalist monetary system is based on how much effort you put into it. Yeah, maybe an engineer has got to test that thing 1,000 times, make sure it doesn't fall out of the sky. I can understand that, but also there's ideas that come out of nowhere. There's happy accidents happen in engineering. I do some software engineering, and like this, you have your planned thing, and then you have the unplanned thing, the happy accident. A lot of times, the happy accident is actually better than your plan.
Oh, it makes
It's
me think of, I watched an interview of Taylor Swift, and she was talking about her first hit song, Romeo and Juliet. She said it took 20 minutes to write it. 20 minutes. And that's, netted her gazillions of dollars. And that's the example, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
it
I
just
mean,
came to her, the words.
it can come that quick because there are songs like you could leave Bruce Springsteen that example. He took Born to Run took 6 months, very tortured sessions. The whole band didn't want to be there. They were going
Right.
over and over for 6 months on one song. And then you have other people like Dylan, would just rattle off a song and get it done that day. Like he'll do Blood on the Tracks, like something like Tangled Up in Blue. It's kind of like done in off the cuff in the recordings. I had a guy that was an engineer on the show talking about it. Dylan didn't even show the rest of the band how to play the song. He just did the song and expected them to kind of fit in. They had no idea what he was going to do, and he just put it down. And it's like that first take is like just done on the first take. And it's like it didn't take that long. It's like it took like the 5 minutes that the song is. It's like that's what it is.
That's it.
And
That's it.
sometimes that's what happens. It's like you could have that tortured 6 month session that Springsteen had, or you can have something that's done in 5 minutes. And sometimes it's like what's the value? Both of them are really good songs.
Yes.
One took 6 months, one took 5 minutes.
And do you find that is one of the best things about being a creator, is that you're open to that. You're open to those downloads where suddenly you just pick up a pen and you just write it, or you just paint it, or whatever it is, and it just works. You're not overthinking it. You're just relaxed, and that's when I can really feel that, coming back to that muse idea of that's just working through you
Yeah, it's
out of the
all
blue.
okay. Yeah, I have to tell everybody it's all okay when it comes to the creative. Where something comes from, it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that it came to you, right? That's what matters. Like if it's not coming to you, then that's a problem. But if it comes to you in slices or it comes as a whole thing just comes to you. I've had artists tell me the whole thing just came to me and I didn't torture about it. I'd let it come in and it just happened. And other ones is like, oh, it came in pieces and I had to kind of, weave it together
Stitch it
and
together.
stitch it together. Well, that's how that one was supposed to be. And I don't like you don't judge like, well, the one that had to stitch together, is that better than the one that came fast? It's like, no, it's like they all come from wherever they come from.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that just comes from getting quiet. And yeah, I think that's a real benefit of when you're just happy in your own company, because then I don't know, that's when it seems to come, in my experience anyway, just when you're not being bombarded from all fronts of,
By the noise.
people or things, the noise. Yep, yep.
Noise
And
is
you
a
just,
big problem. We got so much noise pollution.
yeah, don't we
I mean,
ever?
like I'm a child of the '70s, right? And I had four TV
Same.
channels, no internet, a couple radio channels. You had to read a book, So, and if you listen to a record, it was on vinyl or 8 track, and you'd listen to the whole thing.
Yep.
So now we've got it's like a lot of times I tell my daughters like turn it all off and go and kind of quiet your mind and start from there. Because if you don't, then it's going to be like all these things coming from all over the place. Now maybe that's cool for and sometimes maybe that's what you want, right? Because if you're doing some kind of in the moment and you can handle that. I've seen some younger artists that can have all this stuff going on and somehow process it. But I'm a child of the '70s. I can't do it that way.
No, I'm the same, Panda. I can't either. I'm similar genre to you, generation to you, and um, yeah, like that time when there wasn't any internet, there wasn't a mobile phone. Had to be home when the street lights went on, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. You had so much freedom, and yeah, you realize how good it was in that term. That yeah, and as kids, you would just play make up stuff because you're not watching it on a screen, you're not on a pad or something like that. You just have to make it up in your imagination. And
yeah. I mean, I loved having the
yeah,
Lego set that didn't have a theme. I had a Lego set that
just
was
the
just this
blocks.
box of blocks, and I could
Yep.
create whatever I wanted. And now
Yep.
everybody today, the toys are always like totally themed to direct you in a certain direction, but you can't just use your imagination. And I was more like, I loved the Lincoln Logs and Rector sets that didn't have a design, that just had the parts. And I could just go put together anything I wanted. And
Yes.
I think that's what allowed me to kind of get into music and think in that way, where it didn't have to have like a set kind of plan. You just unplanned things. But yeah, I just think like at some point that there's a structure to the way you do something, right? But a lot of times it's like this muse kind of inspired in the moment flow state. I've asked there's so many authors, it's like they'll have their world, but sometimes if they go into that dialogue flow state, it will actually change some aspects of the world they built. It will change aspects of the plot they had outlined. Because it's like, oh, like what I planned is not as good as what I'm seeing right now. So I'm going to adjust it.
Oh, I can relate to that. Yeah, you come up with an idea and it's like, oh, I should do this with that now, or yeah, head down that way with it, or yeah, definitely.
So you just open to all possibilities, and it makes things to me very exciting. It could be like overwhelming if you don't know how to focus and kind of if everything comes at once and then you can't figure out what to do, that becomes a problem. But I think a lot of us we find a way to process, what we're the download and figure out how to get it into the world, and then later we'll mess around with it. But we at least can get it out of our heads and out of our heart and into the ether, into the space.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I find my notes on my phone really helps me, because then I'm not frightened of forgetting, because I think, oh, I got to get that down while I'm thinking of it, and I can see it vividly. I'll quickly get it down and put it into a folder on my phone, and then I can just let it marinate in the background of my mind, rather than, you do that, oh, don't forget, and then you later on you think, what was it I was thinking of again, and it's lost if I don't do that. Yeah, and then I can kind of sit with my ideas, and what resonates will pop forward. Yeah.
So on your web page there that has an email sign up, is that how people contact with you to get on your mailing list, or just to get in touch with you?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. People on my mailing list, sort of have much more intimate access to me, I guess. They also have access to my work before the public, because I only do 4-day exclusive releases. So after that 4 days, that series is no longer available, including the prints.
Mm.
So yeah, no, that's definitely the best place to get in touch, on my website and my newsletter, definitely.
So that's interesting. You talked about this. So that maybe is that like the secret to your marketing, that you have these kind of time um, time marked releases that eventually, so each collection becomes like its own kind of collector item, or is that the whole the marketing strategy behind that?
Yeah, definitely Phantom, because it just creates scarcity. It also, for the collectors, it maintains the value, whether they're buying a print or an original. They're never available again. The only way they'll come up again is if someone sells something they've bought.
Cool.
But
So
for
you
mine,
create
they're
that
never
market,
released.
like exclusive, like short run. Yeah, because
Yep.
that's a good idea. Because that's what a lot of artists are doing now. They're doing short run. Even musicians are doing short run, like records and limited albums that have, like, they're signed or have tracks that other albums don't have, or are limited to a fan club. Prince did that. He actually had an internet fan club, and I was in it. And he actually released some albums that were only to the fan club. He's like this big
Yep.
multi-million dollar artist, and he released this very small batch of records to people in the fan club. And that was like unheard of for such a big artist to do that. And I thought he was acting more like a smaller artist, like somebody on a indie label. And I thought that was really cool because it made you feel like you had something that, like, how could you get that from a major artist?
Exactly, Phantom. And I think also it rewards people for being, we all rely on the fans, so to speak. He wouldn't have been where he was without the fans. And I think, to just kind of give back and appreciate those people that are buying your work and that love what you do. I agree. I love that. That's one of the reasons I do it too. So that it's just, yeah, giving them something back rather than just open slather to everyone.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes you
mm,
feel like when you have artists that are willing to do these, like, and it's today, it's so much, some of because of the technology, we can actually create these like smaller releases for whatever type of art you're doing. I've talked to like indie filmmakers that can actually get a film out for under like 30,000, under 50,000, which is like small for a film, super small, and they can have these micro budgets and they can get stuff out. And it's like their vision's getting out, and they didn't have to go through all these hurdles. They can get it to the street, and I'm like, wow, that's really heartening because that's where we're gonna get the cool stuff. you know, that's
yeah, yeah.
the way I see it. But
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I think that's a great time, to be alive now as a creator, the technology and what it allows us to do without middleman involvement and all the hurdles and all of that kind of stuff. It's so good that you can reach, your true audience and the people that are really resonating and love what you do.
so, do you have any project for 2025 that you could tell the audience about that are coming up?
Yeah, so my next release, When One Door Closes, Another One Opens, that's coming up, releasing 29th of April to the 2nd of May. So the 4 days. So the newsletter, my newsletter database will have access, before the public for that one. And then after that, I'll start work on the next series, which I've come up with this idea. I'm kind of going to create a character telling sort of her story, but also with the symbolism, because I still really love the idea of the symbolism and meaning of the art as well, rather than just this is her story, but
Mhm.
layering it down. So it'll still have the hidden key, it'll still have the QR code to sort of deepen that whole experience of it. So yeah, and then hopefully next year I'm aiming to do that huge exhibition we were talking about before, where it's the whole shebang. So that's sort of definitely something I want to do, but that'll be next year. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I look forward to all your releases, and I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. We want to encourage people to click on Joanna Blair artist.com/email sign up. That will be fully clickable, so you don't have to remember it. But we were just live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Within the podcast description on those platforms, you'll be able to click on that URL. We do encourage you to click on that to get more detailed information and be able to connect with Joanna. And I want to thank you again for being on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's totally my pleasure. I've really enjoyed our chat. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Have a great night or day. I
You
always
too.
forget what time some people are.
Yeah, Dave. Thanks so much, Phantom. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.